Okay, so picture this. You're at the airport. You're grabbing a coffee, checking your gate number, just a totally normal travel day. Then an announcement cuts through all the usual noise, but it's not about a flight. It's something else, something weird.
And suddenly, that message is blasting through the terminal. Now, this wasn't some glitch, and it wasn't just a prank. This was a coordinated cyber attack that hit multiple airports all across the US and Canada. It created absolute chaos by hijacking the one system that everybody there is conditioned to listen to, the PA system. Okay, let's really break this one down.
So to really get what happened here, the first thing you have to understand is that the airports, well, they weren't actually the first target. This was a textbook supply chain attack. The attackers didn't go for the front door of the airport. They found a much weaker link in the chain, a third-party vendor that managed these PA systems for tons of airports. They used that vendor as a backdoor to get to their real, high-visibility target.
So, in the middle of all that chaos, investigators had a huge question on their hands. How in the world do you track down ghosts in the machine? Well, you start by looking for the trail they left behind.
And that evidence in the security world is what we call indicators of compromise, or IOCs for short. You can just think of them as digital fingerprints. See, every single action an attacker takes leaves some kind of trace behind. And finding these IOCs, that's always the first and most critical step in any digital investigation. It's how you start to piece the story together.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how these different clues start to build a narrative. On one hand, you've got the hard technical evidence, right? Logins to the PA servers from weird places, or network traffic pinging known malicious IP addresses. Then, on the other hand, you have the behavioral clues, things like an admin account making changes to the system at 3 in the morning on a Saturday, which is way outside any normal maintenance window. Separately, they're just suspicious, but when you put them together, you start to get a really clear picture of an intrusion.
So with that digital trail pointing the way, the next questions were pretty obvious. Who on earth did this? And maybe more importantly, what did they want? Because I'll tell you right now, the answer was not about money. The trail eventually led investigators to hacktivist groups, with names like People's Lulz and Moses staff popping up. And here's the key twist in this whole story. Their motivation wasn't financial at all. They weren't trying to steal credit card numbers or banking information. Their goal was purely ideological. And this table just lays it out so perfectly. The threat actor, in this case, the hacktivist, has a very specific motivation. They want to create public disruption and spread propaganda. So, the key lesson here is huge. If you can understand an attacker's motive, you can start to predict their target. These groups didn't want cash. They wanted eyeballs and headlines.
This really gets to the heart of the matter. A cybercriminal who's after money might target a bank's database, but an attacker who just wants to flex their power and cause a big scene, they're going to ignore that database and go straight for the system that can broadcast their message to thousands of people all at once. It's a totally different kind of threat, and it demands a different mindset to defend against.
Okay, so we've got the who and the why. Now let's start to peel back the layers on the how. How did they actually breach these systems and pull this whole thing off?
Right, so the attack wasn't just a single event. It unfolded in 4 pretty methodical stages. First, they got their initial access, and it looks like they used stolen employee credentials from that third-party vendor. Second, they moved laterally through the vendor's network to find the systems that connected out to the airports. Third was execution, where they took control. And then finally, the impact, broadcasting those bogus messages. That execution step is actually pretty clever. They abused what are called remote monitoring and management tools, or RMM for short. Now, this is standard software that IT departments use literally every day for maintenance and support. So by using these legitimate, trusted tools, their malicious activity looked just like normal IT work. It let them hide in plain sight. So we know the steps they took, but what was that fundamental weakness that let them just walk right in? What was the security failure that made this entire attack possible in the first place?
Well, it really came down to 3 core vulnerabilities. The vendor just had weak security overall, but the single most critical failure was the complete absence of multi-factor authentication, or MFA. That meant a stolen password was the only key they needed to get in. You combine that with poor network segmentation, which basically allowed them to roam around freely once they were inside, and you've got a recipe for disaster. And that explains exactly why they targeted the speakers. I mean, why not ticketing data or flight control systems? Because the PA system was the perfect target for a hacktivist. It offered the maximum amount of public impact for the minimum amount of technical effort. It's often seen as a less critical system, so it's usually less protected. This quote right here just sums up the whole incident. It really doesn't matter how secure an airport's own internal network is. If they give a vendor a key to the back door and that vendor leaves it unlocked, the airport is completely vulnerable. Your security perimeter doesn't stop at your own walls anymore. It extends to every single partner you work with. Analyzing an attack is one thing, but the real value is in what you learn from it. I mean, threat intelligence is only useful if it leads to action. So let's look at the concrete steps we can take to stop this from happening again. Here are 4 key defensive strategies that come out of this. 1. Vet your vendors. Don't just trust them. You have to hold them to strict security standards. 2. Lock down access. Enforce MFA everywhere and give people and vendors only the absolute minimum access they need to do their job. 3. Isolate your systems. Segment your network so that even if an attacker gets into one place, they can't get everywhere. And 4, actively hunt for threats instead of just sitting back and waiting for alarms to go off. So let's say you're the security analyst walking into work the day after this attack. What's your first move? It's this. You enforce multi-factor authentication for every single external partner, effective immediately. Since stolen credentials were the way in, this one single action slams that door shut and dramatically reduces the risk of a repeat performance. All right, let's wrap this all up and really distill the most important lessons we can take away from this whole incident. So the most crucial point is this. In today's interconnected world, there's really no such thing as a non-critical system. A speaker system can't leak your personal data, but it can absolutely ground flights and cause widespread panic. Real security means protecting everything, with special attention on any system that's connected to an outside partner. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. We've seen what happens when something as simple as an airport's PA system gets compromised. So now, think about your own world, your company, your school, your community. What's that overlooked, unimportant system that could actually cause the most public disruption if it fell into the wrong hands?